Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, I've made a tier list to help you pick your hero in the buddy meta. Before we get started, I will quickly explain how I rate all the heroes. For the purpose of this video, we're going to look at two criteria. The first one is, does my hero have any way to generate additional resources, either through the buddy or the hero power? Right now, there is a very specific thing you can do to generate lots of extra resources. Recycle powerful buddy battlecry effects through cards such as Draconic, Murkai, Rylak, or the Battlecry spell. The other criteria is, does my hero have the ability to generate its own game plan and either win the game or consistently get top 4 just executing that strategy? This is far more common in the buddy meta because certain buddies just have a specific effect that can map out your whole game. S tier. These heroes have a very high chance of reaching unlimited economy, giving them all the resources they need to win the game, or they have such a strong game plan that the default placement is first place unless you get unlucky. First up, we have Sky Captain KRAGG. This should make a lot of sense given what we just talked about. KRAGG's buddy is a battle cry, which refreshes the hero power. KRAGG's hero power gives you a lot of gold, so this essentially means that you're going to go infinite very quickly. If you have a few trigger battlecry effects per turn, you will continuously reset your hero power, and that will then give you more money, which will allow you to roll into more reset effects where you will trigger the buddy's battlecry. So essentially all you have to do is keep a regular version of the buddy on the board and then as many extra triggers as possible. If you have 2 Draconics lying around, that's amazing. That means you're essentially guaranteed to be infinite every turn. You could also have a Murkai there to reset the effect at the end of the turn, so that the next turn you have a lot of money. And with that money, you just do regular APM stuff. You could have Rock on the board, you could have Greymane on the board, anything that rewards you for being able to spend lots of gold, cycle minions, buff your board. ZEPHRYS, similar to what we just talked about with KRAGG, ZEPHRYS is a battlecry buddy, which allows you to discover a unit that you don't have a pair of yet. Now, this was nerfed by the devs by making it being able to target your golden minions. Before, if you would have a minion that was golden on your board, that wouldn't show up in the discovery pool. Now, the reason why this is so incredibly strong is once you have a Draconic and a ZEPHRYS buddy and a BRANN, you essentially go infinite. Because what happens is you play the Draconic, you trigger the ZEPHRYS buddy, you only have 1 Draconic, so you'll get that Draconic again automatically without having to click it, and then you'll get 1 card of your choosing. The reason why this was nerfed is much more difficult to set up right now because you need to have pairs of everything else, otherwise you'll pull that instead and the combo will be broken because you won't get another Draconic. And the whole point is that you'll have 2 Draconics, you'll sell 1, you'll only have 1 left, you play the trigger on the minion, and so on and so on and so on. And then what you can do is you can combine this with, say you have Rock on your board, Tavern Tempest in your hand, you'll just be able to generate 1 Tavern Tempest and 1 Draconic every time you play them. So your whole turn is just going to be play card, play card, play card, play card, infinite resources. Now, in order to set this up, usually what happens is I end up making a golden Draconic and I just use those first few Draconics to just get pairs of everything. And then I'll have the pairs, I'll either have them on the board or I'll have 1 or 2 in the hand just to make sure they're not targets. Usually with BRANN, this is a good example. I'll have a BRANN on the board and a BRANN in my hand, so it's no longer a valid target. And the only valid targets will be the Draconic and the Tavern Tempest. Now there's plenty of other crazy stuff you can do with this. You can get something like Shellamental and freeze a huge minion in the shop, like the tier 5 elemental that grows, and then you just copy Shellamental over and over and over and over, and you just keep targeting the big minion, target the big minion, target big minion. There's just so much potential to immediately win the game and just pop off. Now, I will add as a disclaimer that this is not easy to do. Unless you're willing to lose some MMR practicing how to set this up, it's perfectly fine to not attempt this and not treat ZEPHRYS like an S tier hero. However, I do have to put him in S tier because you can just have infinite resources relatively early in the game if you understand how to set up this combo. MAIEV. MAIEV received a phenomenal buff compared to the previous buddy meta. Her hero power now unlocks 1 turn faster. This means that when you use a regular buddy and your hero power minion, you will be able to play the golden minion next turn. However, as you just saw, you can also trigger the effect multiple times, speeding up the time it takes for the minion to unlock. So you can get the golden minion in the very same turn where you hero power it. That is ridiculous. So all you have to do is keep the buddy on your board, and the moment that you have a BRANN, as you can see here, we have a golden one. You just trigger the buddy, and now every single turn you can hero power whatever minion you want. You will get it for 1 gold, it will be golden, and you will have access to it immediately. Extremely powerful. Lord BAROV. This is a great example of a hero that is incredibly different based on the MMR you're playing at. This is because Lord BAROV requires a deep understanding of game mechanics, knowing how strong every hero is going to be at what turn, and even knowing what leveling curve somebody took in a game and how strong they are going to be to predict who is going to win the battle. Most very high level players will win the vast majority of their bets, giving them just a pure bonus of a lot of cash. And during the buddy meta, this is really good because the buddy will double its effect. Coins are now 2 gold instead of 1. So what you'll do is farm coins early on, and then when you'll have 6 or 7 of them in your hand ready to spend, you pop the buddy out, and then it's just coin level, coin level, and you're just tier 6 in no time. It's very, very good. But again, if you have played BAROV before and you notice that you are struggling with getting the bets correct, it's totally fine to treat this as an average or even below average hero. This hero really requires you to hit those bets with a very high consistency. Queen AZSHARA. This is the first hero on our list that does not have crazy economy options. Yet she is still S tier, and she is the only hero in S tier that does not have crazy economy options. And that is because her game plan is so incredibly good right now. You get deep blue, you cast it on Zesty, and the buddy will just get buff, and not just lots of extra stats, you will also cast the deep blue multiple extra times. So now the deep blue itself is scaling much faster. It's incredibly powerful. It'll very likely get nerfed or adjusted, or at the very least maybe not count as additional casts for the scaling of the deep blue. But until then, pick AZSHARA, force deep blue, and probably gonna win the lobby. That's how consistent it is, because the hero itself also helps you find more deep blues. E.T.C. This is the king of the buddies, and in an environment where so many buddies are very broken, E.T.C. is obviously also S tier because you'll have a chance to get all of these buddies yourself and even combine them and also make some of them golden with your own buddy. An example would be, oh, I pulled an AZSHARA buddy, I'll just golden it right away. I have a deep blue, pop, you win the game. Also, E.T.C. has this disgusting early game where you just find a Reno buddy, which is very easy because it's a tier 1. So you'll have a couple of shots at this on turn 3, 4, and maybe even 5, and you get a jailer buddy. So the Reno and the jailer buddy combined mean that you have a golden jailer buddy as early as turn 4. That means that when this thing dies, it summons 6 more units on turn 4. Yes, that's ridiculous. It was in the game the whole of the previous buddy meta, so I don't think it'll get adjusted. But you're pretty much just getting free wins in the early game, which keeps your health high and then allows you to get up to the higher tiers to get all of these crazy buddies that we've already discussed, and we'll discuss plenty of others that can win the game. Snake Eyes. We have arrived at our final S tier hero. Snake Eyes buddy is new because Snake Eyes was not in the game, the previous buddy meta, but oh my, it is extremely good. You want to get this out as early as turn 4 if you can, so it's great to combine your hero power with the turn that you push the buddy button. Now, if it's turn 5 or turn 6, it's not the end of the world, of course, but the earlier you get this, the crazier it is, because this will start generating free spells. Now, it's even better than that because you can get spells that are higher than your own tier. So let's say you do pop this on turn 4, let's say you're lucky, you get a high roll of the dice, you have a minion that you can sell, and then on turn 5, you get offered maybe a tier 6 or tier 5 spell because the dice roll is not tied to your own tavern tier. So to put that in perspective, if you had a Syllivos on turn 4, which is already very good because it's additional resources, Syllivos will not be discovering golden touches, for instance, when you are only on tier 2. The Snake Eyes buddy can do that. The ultimate high roll, something that I've already achieved myself, is getting Eyes of the Earth Mother to make your buddy golden and then roll 2 dice from then on. Very, very good, just this passive value generator. And last but definitely not least, the buddy has a type. It's a mech, so you can module it, you can keep it in your composition for a very long time, if not the whole game. A tier. These heroes either have a decent chance of reaching unlimited resources, or their game plan is strong enough to consistently get first place, or at the very least, top 4. Dr. HOLLI'DAE. The 9 Frogs is a fantastic buddy. The value is all front-loaded. What I mean with that is you get everything right now. You don't have to wait for it. It's not like you get, oh, 1 spell every turn for the whole rest of the game. You might think, oh, maybe that's better than just getting 9 right now. It's much better getting 9 essentially as fast as you can buy 9 minions, which doesn't take that long because you're getting extra money from the spells you're buying as well, or you're getting for free from buying the minions. And by getting all the value up front, you can use that to have a big power spike. It allows you to level and not take damage. It allows you to set up with a lot of scaling and just get your build up and running right away and run ahead of the competition. So in Battlegrounds, anytime you can choose to just front load your value or spread it out evenly, you want to front load. You want to just get very, very strong as fast as possible and then abuse that position to build a very high scaling engine. Another cool thing is that when the 9 Frogs is fully exhausted and you have 0 spells left, you have the choice to either keep it on your board and then press your buddy button again to get 2 more of these, which will then triple. You will now discover a 6-drop. Presumably you're on tier 5 by now. You'll also get 18 more spells because the 9 Frogs will be recharged. Now, if you were pressured and you weren't able to buff the 9 Frogs and you had to sell it off your board, that's not that big of a deal because you can still get double 9 Frogs and just use them one after the other or both at the same time and still get your 18 spells. So it's very flexible. It's usually quite easy to keep it on your board to triple. And especially if you can buy 5-cost minions, you'll get cards such as Golden Touch, Beanstalk. It's just very, very good. Togwaggle, another fantastic combo here. The Togwaggle buddy will fill your tavern with the best minions, or at least the highest tier minions that your opponents have, and then you can hero power to take all of them in one turn. It's so beautiful. That turn is such a high power spike. You're essentially waiting until you either know somebody has something really good because you fought them, or you just see other people's buddy animation going off and you know that they have the buddies on the board. And it really feels like you're just sitting there like, hold. All right, now steal and get all the good stuff in one go. So it is a little bit of a risky hero where you will be playing without a buddy for a bit longer than a lot of other players because you don't want to rush playing this buddy. You want to play it when you have the maximum chance to steal all the good stuff. Now, you'll get 2 more later. So if possible, stay above damage cap. And, you know, if you know there's at least 1 or 2 good things to steal, just play it. Don't get overly greedy. Well, maybe. And then, you know, grab something to work with. And then the next 2 buddies will probably end up tripling some stuff. Because now, not only will you add another copy of something you already stole, if it was a 6-drop that somebody kept on their board, but you'll have 2 of them. So you'll be able to play one, hero power, get a lot of money, play the other one, sell a lot of cards, get a lot of money to buy the second round of shops. And it's just a very, very high power spike moment. So really, really solid hero. And because it's a battle cry, you guessed it, you can trigger it again and again. So if you have something really good, let's say Brann, you can utilize trigger battle cry effects to refresh the shop over and over and just make a golden Brann. MURLOC Holmes. What a great example of a hero and a buddy that are generating additional value. MURLOC Holmes will give you an extra coin if you can guess correctly, which is a lot easier than the BAROV bets because you're just seeing what was on the board rather than who's going to win. That's quite a bit easier. And the buddy will then give you an extra copy of that minion if you did guess correctly. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff that can happen here with stealing a Brann for Brann early or taking a really good buddy from someone else. That can all happen quite easily. So for this reason, I try to get my buddy out turn 4 with MURLOC Holmes, and I try to rush the golden buddy as fast as I can. Sometimes I'll just pay 9 gold, 10 gold, 11 gold, maybe even 12 gold if I have to just push that button, get it as early as possible and start stealing doubles. Essentially, I'll try to be on tier 5 or at the very least tier 4 when I do this because then I'll also get a golden minion from tripling the buddy. TESS, another great example of a value generating buddy. Similar to MURLOC Holmes, I will try to get the TESS buddy out as early as possible. Turn 4 would be great, but that does mean they have to have one of 2 things. Either you need to have just won every fight because let's say you had a backstage security start and the buddy button is just getting cheaper and cheaper, or the other one is you set up with extra economy. So turn 3 you played careful investment, your board is maybe sell a mental which you can sell, and then you can just overpay for the buddy. I routinely pay 8 or 9 gold to get the TESS buddy out on turn 4. Granted that my previous opponent did have a buddy that I want to steal. So I'm not going to sell, 2 extra minions to get my buddy out to, say, steal a INGE buddy, because that doesn't do anything on my board because my hero power is not INGE's. Now, what would be an example of a fantastic steal? TESS, FAELIN, SCABBS, just anything that makes more money. The buddy meta is all about make money so that that money can make more money, and then you'll have even more money, and then you just pop off. This is just the silliness, the craziness that is all in buddy meta, and TESS embraces that like no other because she can just steal buddies from everyone else. You see somebody with a great setup, oh, let me just grab that, and then I get more value and more. It's just so good. And a little bit of a tip, if you steal an E.T.C buddy, you want a hero power to make the buddy golden in the shop and then buy it, because then you'll also get a triple reward from playing it. Granted that you want to make something in the shop golden and not on your board, but it's these little things that just make TESS an absolute powerhouse in the buddy meta. MALYGOS. MALYGOS's buddy gives you value, but not by giving you extra cards directly. It allows you to get high tier minions early on your board that you shouldn't have yet. So you could get an early BRANN and make money with that. You could get an early TESS. You could get an early Syllabus. This is really where the strength of the MALYGOS buddy comes in. You will get high tier minions you're not supposed to have really early. And this, most of the time, is going to be really good. Now, it is random, and sometimes you do get a bad option, but there is always the reroll option next turn. And even getting something like a zap early on will not give you extra money, but it will make you so strong that you can just level and continuously keep making these higher tier minions to add to your board. SCABBS, very similar to TESS, you want to get your buddy out on turn 4. Now, unlike TESS, you don't know whose buddy you're getting. So with SCABBS, I do try to get it out on turn 4 most of the time, because it feels so bad if you fight the TESS and you could have had the buddy out, but you were like, what are the odds that it's gonna happen? And there's a lot of really good buddies to steal. Now use your own judgment. If there are almost no good buddies to steal, then you're going to treat your buddy at a much, much lower value than if there are, majority of buddies that are good to steal. Most of the time, you're gonna have some high value stuff. Some good examples are FAELIN or TESS, like we mentioned, or TESS. Stuff that makes more stuff is just fantastic in the buddy meta. Still A tier, but just a little lower than TESS. MILLHOUSE. This is a great example of a hero that gets a lot better in the buddy meta for the simple reason that when you have MILLHOUSE's buddy active, you will probably not need to roll a whole lot. I recently had a game where I did not roll a single time after I got my buddy out. And this is because you can use evolution mechanics to get an early 5 or even 6 drop in the shop and then use the buddy to farm those minions. I was able to make golden BRANN and 2 golden Moon Eaters with pretty much unlimited cash, all of this while still on tier 4. So MILLHOUSE is an absolutely fantastic hero if you can get the early evolve, and if not, most of the time you're going to be just fine by playing a little bit more defensive, buying a few 4 drops to fill out your board, and then going to tier 5 and doing it that way. GALLYWIX. It's no secret that GALLYWIX is a powerhouse of a hero. He's usually even better outside of buddy meta simply because the ability to go infinite is more unique to GALLYWIX outside of a buddy meta where you don't get a bunch of extra resources. Right now, there are plenty of heroes that we've already discussed that can get infinite resources by abusing the buddy mechanic. GALLYWIX's buddy does not have a battle cry, so it's mainly just a one and done, but that doesn't mean that GALLYWIX is a bad hero. It means that it's a really, really good hero with a buddy that is somewhat synergistic, but reasonable. But that still makes GALLYWIX a fantastic hero because of his hero power. VOL'JIN. VOL'JIN was nerfed not too long ago. The hero power now only gives you a temporary attack boost rather than just switching the stats outright. However, in the buddy meta, you can now also switch the health component, and with the help of Shellamental, you can make these stats permanent. You take your biggest minion on the board, switch the stats with a minion in the shop, and then use the Shellamental buffs on the minion in the shop to make all those stats permanent. So keep in mind that VOL'JIN is only A tier in lobbies where Shellamental is in, so that's Nagas and Elementals. FINLEY. This might seem like a weird choice for A tier at first, because FINLEY could be any hero, but there are 2 reasons for this. Number 1, you can pick 5 or 6 cost buddies with FINLEY and get them a lot faster because FINLEY's buddy is only a 4-star, so this will make it a lot faster to get these high tier buddies. And then number 2, which is something we've already covered, Finley has a battle cry buddy. So all those mechanics we talked about earlier, the draconic, the trigger battle cry, you can use those on the Finley buddy to print more buddies. There are plenty of shenanigans here. I will name a few. You can be BRANN and then get BRANN before your buddy. Use it. It's a battle cry. You now get double the egg. You get so much value super early on. Or you could be Sylvanas. You now get your buddy super fast because it's a 4-star for a 6-star buddy. And you can use these trigger battle cry effects on the Finley buddy, making a bunch of Nathanos, which gets out of control really quickly. And that's only 2 examples of the many shenanigans that are available when you keep the Finley buddy on your board. FAELIN. FAELIN's buddy is, surprise, surprise, a battle cry. It's a pretty good effect as well. You get a 1, 3, and a 5-star minion. Now, because this is a battle cry buddy, we can use all the before mentioned mechanics to trigger this over and over again, and it is very easy to create something like a Moon Eater board where every time you trigger the FAELIN buddy, you get a card, you get so many odd cards in your hand. So this is essentially a strategy that you can force quite easily, because triggering the FAELIN buddy will give you 5-cost minions as well, which will give you BRANN, Draconic, will give you Moon Eater. So there's such a high consistency to this. And even if you don't get that, just getting a bunch of extra resources by triggering the FAELIN buddy over and over again justifies him being in A tier. We all know that having a Soul Rewinder is a fantastic situation on Lich. While Lich's buddy guarantees you a Soul Rewinder every single game. That's very powerful. It's super good in the early and the mid game, where you can hero power and get an efficient board by paying less gold for getting these minions on your board, but it really starts to shine later in the game, where you can use this on very expensive spells such as Golden Touch or Beanstalk. And not only will you be able to use this and get 6 drops for a very cheap price, you will also get a lot of stats on your buddy because you prevented a lot of damage by hero powering these expensive spells. B tier. These heroes either have good economy options, which gives them a chance at reaching unlimited resource status, or they have a decent game plan, which will likely top 4 and has a chance for first place. YOGG-SARON. Yogg has been tremendously buffed this patch. The buddy now triggers every single turn, as opposed to just once when you sell it, and the spins have been drastically improved. You can now get the Mind Flayer goggles, which will cast 4 random tavern spells, which is a huge upside. It's a very small risk of turning your biggest guy into a 20/20, but that wouldn't happen to me, right? The other one is Pyroblast, which is now +10/+10 instead of 4/4. That's a huge buff. And the switch stat option now, instead of reducing the stats of some of your minions, just takes 2 minions and adds those stats to 2 other minions. So that's just strict upside. These are huge improvements, and that's why Yogg is now in B tier rather than just being a mediocre hero. RENO. You might look at RENO and initially think that he's not that good in the buddy meta, but there are 2 reasons why he's quite useful. Number 1, the buddy is super cheap, so you can triple it really early and get a high tier minion. That is a huge upside. If you're playing outside of the buddy meta, you don't know if you're going to get a triple on RENO, so you don't know if you're going to get an early 5 or 6 drop to use your hero power on. On top of that, in the current meta, where you have Ghoul a Cobra, you can put the Ghoul in the back, and especially if you have a golden buddy, which you'll have pretty early, you can add a Titus as well, or 2 Ghouls, and just make them golden at the start of the combat, which is pretty much the same thing as just having 2 extra hero powers, because you only care about these minions being golden during the combat phase. So that is a fantastic way to play RENO on this patch. INGE. INGE's buddy is fantastic. You can use your hero power on the buddy itself to make it bigger, which starts scaling quite quickly. Now you have the ability to make any minion large. You can just use that every turn on a shield or a cleave, but there are 2 ways to really exploit this. The first is to use this in combination with Beatboxer. You can use the hero power on a magnetic, make it huge, and then if you have 1 or more Beatboxers, you can double or even triple the effect of your hero power. The other is to use Shellamental. You can make a large minion in the shop with your hero power, and then make the stats permanent with the Shellamental's ability. If damage cap is still on, or if you're confident you're going to win the round anyway, you can even freeze the big minion in the shop, next turn hero powered again, and use your Shellamental buffs again. So this is a great way to scale up your board. RAKANISHU. This hero was reworked with the buddy patch. You now get a Tavern Light with your hero power, and your buddy gives you 2 Tavern Lights end of turn. Now that is quite important. It is an end of turn mechanic, which means you can increase this with Drukhari. If you have a golden buddy and a Drukhari, you will get 8 Tavern Lights at the end of your turn. This can be just stacked on a cleave, or you can use it in combination with Nala or Greymane or anything that benefits from playing a lot of Tavern Lights every turn. On top of that, you now also have the choice of where the stats go. The previous iteration of Rakanishu's buddy was horrible. The stats would just go randomly somewhere, maybe a unit you were going to sell next round anyway. It was not good. Now you can choose where the stats go, and you can even hold the Lantern Lights in your hand until you have a suitable target. This makes Rakanishu a very safe hero, and you're most likely going to land in the top 4 when you pick him. Shudderwock. This is an example of a hero that gets worse in the buddy meta. Normally I would rank Shudderwock as an S tier hero rather than a B tier hero. Now that doesn't mean he's bad. The hero power is still fantastic, and especially if you get a pen pal early, the buddy is also quite solid. You can use your hero power on the pen pal to get the hero power on the buddy sooner, and then hopefully find a great battle cry from the buddy and then switch your hero powers to the great battle cry. So an example could be, I have Brann, I get Tavern Tempest, I can now use my hero power on Tavern Tempest, get elementals, feed Rock, etc, etc. Generating random battle cries later in the game is usually not as powerful as repeat battle cry proccing the battle cry of your choice. Brann, very solid hero in the buddy meta. You love to roll pen pal early, same as Shudderwock. However, with Brann, you don't want to play it until you get your Brann. So it's totally fine to lose a round early, because you will have to pay 1 extra gold for your buddy if you lose. But if you use Brann in combination with pen pal, you now have a 2 gold discount. So even though you're losing a round by holding the buddy, you're actually gaining a gold. Funny how that works. This will allow you to get your egg super fast, super cheap, and then you can start generating battle cries with your egg to use with the Brann, and that is just overall solid. It's not quite cheating like a lot of other heroes do, but that's strong, right? That's a good, nice B tier hero. VOONE. VOONE's buddy is extremely synergistic with the hero power, allowing you to very easily make golden minions. If you can get your hands on an early high tier minion, this is a crazy good hero, as you will make a golden 5 or even 6 drop and then use the triple, discover another high tier minion. Especially if you can get your hands on a Drukhari for the next hero power, you will make a silly amount of copies of whatever minion you want. HOOKTUSK. This was one of the strongest heroes in the previous buddy meta, but she has recently been nerfed to now have a tier 5 buddy, which makes it quite expensive to get. This still doesn't make her bad, however, because now you just use the buddy as early as you can and you start recuperating the gold very quickly. Usually what I will do is I will get the buddy out and then use it on a tier 3 or a tier 4 minion to be able to buy an additional minion. So what a perfect turn would be is you buy a tier 4 battlecry minion, something like a guard, buff your board, then you hero power it, now you get 4 extra gold, you get to buy another unit from the shop, maybe a nice little 1-cost spell, and you're set up very nicely. Then as soon as you can get the golden buddy, you do it. A perfect setup would be going to tier 5, then the next turn spending 10 gold or more to get your golden buddy, discovering a 6-drop, playing the 6-drop, hero powering it, and you now have 12 gold. And that's just the first turn. If you can get a 5 or a 6-drop every turn, which shouldn't be hard because you're on tier 5 by now, you're getting at least 10 gold from that hero power, which is bananas. That is very good. And that's why, even though it is a high tier buddy and it is quite difficult to get going, once you understand that you can just pay 10 or more gold for the golden buddy and then it's gotta be okay, this is a solid pick in the buddy meta. TERON. TERON's buddy was reworked to now give stats on death rattle. This means that you can combine this with Kel'Thuzad to get permanent stats, and we can use all kinds of amplifiers such as Drukhari and Titus to make this even better. So for the most part, your job as TERON is to get stats on your buddy. You can use this by using tavern spells, or even if you're lucky, what I was able to do was set up a mutinous transfer where you have a large other minion, then transfer the stats on top of the buddy, and then use Kel'Thuzad on the buddy and make a lot of permanent stats. If you're able to do this, you can even get 2 TERON buddies. So let's say you hadn't really buffed the first buddy much, you can sell it, then use your buddy button again. Now you'll have 2 separate buddies, which you can then use Kel'Thuzad. One buddy buffs the other buddy, and then they just leapfrog buffs over to each other. Very similar to what you can already do with 2 Nightbanes, but now you also get a ton of health by doing this. So a very strong option in the buddy meta. Greybow. Greybow is not going to win a lot of games with his strategy, but he's also not going to lose a ton of them either. So this is what we refer to as a top 4 hero. One strategy you can use is to put phalanx in the back together with your buddy. This means that every time a taunt minion gets attacked, your backline will be getting a lot of extra permanent damage. High damage phalanx is a great way to win fights in the mid game and sneak into the top 4. Because of Greybow's hero power, you will get plenty of taunt minions if you play a lot of death rattles. One of the best things you could be running is a mech horse, because this will spawn 2 taunt minions that when they die spawn 2 other taunt minions, which is fantastic. So overall, a solid tempo choice, but not necessarily a good pick for first place. Mr. Bigglesworth. The cat gets a lot stronger in buddy meta, and this is because you have a pretty good amount of armor, and your buddy generates early value, and by adding more cards to your hand, you're able to fill your board faster as well, resulting in you taking less damage. With your high armor count and the volatile nature of the buddy meta, you can bet on some players dying early while they were trying to set up something really juicy, and then when they do inevitably die, you can take their stuff. So not an S tier hero by any means, but much better than the cat usually performs outside of buddy meta. Sire Denathrius. Sire's buddy got nerfed since the last time around. This used to be a battle cry buddy. Now, because of everything we've already touched upon, you can see how this would easily propel Sire into the A tier by being able to recycle his battle cry over and over, essentially generating infinite money. Now, because it's only a one-time use, this makes it a lot weaker. However, it is extremely synergistic with Sire's hero power. Getting a nice little gold infusion helps you complete your quests. It makes it more likely that you're going to be able to complete these bigger quests such as Pilfered Lamps or any other big expensive quest that normally would take too long. A lot of the time you can even get your second set of buddies and really ramp through your gold to get that quest completed as soon as possible. Bloodwatcher TAE'THELAN. This hero gets a lot better with his buddy. This is because now you can copy a spell every single turn. The important part here is that the spell goes to your hand, so you are the one casting additional spells. We can see with, for instance, the Wheel of Yogg, that when the game casts the spells for you, it does not count to spell casts for, say, Nala or Azerite. This means that if you can get something like an Azerite, you can scale it very quickly. Later in the game, you can even hold a really expensive spell such as Eyes of the Earth Mother or Golden Touch in your hand, copy it on one turn, hold one copy, and then copy it again on the next turn, giving you tons of free resources. So a super solid choice to play a spell-oriented comp. Alexstrasza. Alex received quite a big change with the buddy meta. She now pulls 1 dragon every single turn starting on tier 4 rather than one-time double pull on tier 5. The buddy was also changed to just be pure tempo by adding stats when it's played and also start of combat. The start of combat portion can be made permanent by adding cards such as Poet or Taragosa. The downside of this change is that you're pretty much pushed into one build and one build only, which is the Combat Dragon buff. The upside is that because you pull 1 dragon per turn, you're actually quite likely to hit it. We all know that feeling when you want to play dragons and you don't have a poet, the build doesn't really do anything. But by pulling 1 dragon per turn, the chance that you hit goes up drastically. Sneed. Sneed has a fantastic strategy in Beast and Dead lobbies because of Gulakabra. You can use the hero power on 1 unit to put many death rattles inside 1 unit. You can then use cards such as Macaw and Titus to multiply this effect. When that minion dies or gets targeted by Macaw, you will now get tons of Gulakabra buffs because they are all separate death rattles that are being triggered. Super strong, will very likely get nerfed, but until it does, Sneed is B tier. Sylvanas. This hero goes from unplayable status to pretty darn decent in the buddy meta, and that is purely because of the buddy's effect. You can use it to take any big minion and split its stats onto 2 other minions. That on its own would not necessarily justify B tier, But in the current meta, you can use the trigger battlecry effects to do this over and over. Now, you don't want to trigger the Sylvanas buddy directly because that will randomly eat something and that's not great. What you want to do is have Grave Robber on your board. So in an undead lobby, you can use trigger battlecry on Grave Robber to kill the Sylvanas buddy, put it back in your hand, and recycle its battlecry like that. And that way, you can very reliably, instead of randomly, make huge minions of your choice. Overlord Saurfang. This is our last B tier hero. The reason why Saurfang is in B tier this time around is that the buddy was changed. The buddy now grows every time you buy a unit from the shop. Normally, you just use your hero power on some magnetics, you make some big deflectobots, and call it a day. But now you could use something like an Azerite or any demon buff on the shop to make a large shop, and that allows you to make a huge minion of your buddy in no time. Usually when you use a strategy like this where you only get one really big minion, you want to be careful that it doesn't get sniped by Poison or Leroy's. So you're gonna want to put it in the back and have a bunch of taunts to protect it. Simultaneously, you want to be playing cards yourself, such as Bramblewitch and Leroy, to kill your opponent's threats and then have one huge minion to close it out. C tier. This is where we get riskier heroes. It is still possible that you go infinite with them, have good economy, or get first place executing your game plan. But because they are riskier, there's also a higher chance you're going to end up in the bottom 4. D tier. These heroes are not great in the current meta, but they have some redeeming qualities. Their game plan can get top 4 and first place if you get very lucky, and there are a little bit of economy options among them. E tier. We have reached the bottom of the barrel. There are close to no redeeming qualities for these heroes, in my opinion, for the buddy meta. You should avoid them. We've reached the end of the tier list. I didn't cover the C, D, and E tier heroes separately for 2 reasons. It would make for a very long video, because that's a lot of heroes. Second, I don't think there's that much value in it, simply because you should be picking heroes from S to B tier for the most part. However, sometimes you do get offered a very bad selection of heroes, or if you're free to play, there's a higher chance with only 2 options that you won't get one of these high tier heroes. So I still listed them out for you, so you have a higher chance of picking a better hero. This was the first time we did a project like this, so please, if you enjoy it, if it's useful to you, make sure you let us know in the comments. Also let us know what you would like to see different for next time. Alright guys, have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for watching.